UFC 298 just took place, and it's time for me to do my recap on the entire card. This is probably the best card I've ever seen in a long time. And as far as picks went, I absolutely fucking murdered this card. I went 9-2 on picks. All right, we got 4 right on the main card in general. And dude, we got to break down these fights because, of course, if you guys have seen my reaction to the main event, it's out there. I made a whole video on that, and I will discuss it in this video. Make sure to check the timestamps if you're just interested in my take on a particular one of these fights. But the first one that I am going to start with is Merab Dvalishvili versus Henry Cejudo because, guys, dude, this is honestly one of the scariest, most terrifying performances I've ever seen in my entire life, okay? And what made it even more terrifying and scary, other than, of course, an Olympic gold medalist getting tossed around like a fucking rag doll, it wasn't even him just getting tossed around like a rag doll. It was Merab Dvalishvili playing freaking patty cake with Zhang in the crowd and, doing one of these to his friends in the crowd while dog walking Henry Cejudo at the same time, bro. Like, what the fuck is this guy made of? This reminds me of Khabib on the come up. It's just that, he's ragdolling Olympic gold medalists, bro. I've never seen this before. And what makes it even more terrifying is the fact that he lost the first round and he wasn't looking that good. And all of a sudden, Merab just out of nowhere just killing Cejudo. This was a nasty performance. It was so dominant, honestly. I just felt embarrassed. I honestly felt embarrassed for Henry out there. It was a bad look. And, dude, you got to think about Henry right now. Coming back after a long layoff. And your legacy is intact. I mean, right now, we could think of Volkanovski getting KO'd by Ilia Topuria. That's not good for his legacy. Henry Cejudo sailed off into the sunset. Henry Cejudo left out while on top after defending 2 different belts, 4 title wins in a row. He comes back, loses to Aljo, gets absolutely dog-walked by Merab. He had a close fight with Aljo. And this was not Henry Cejudo losing just because he's old. No, Henry looked great early. He rocked Merab in the first round. He was able to keep distance phenomenally. He took down and held down Merab. You couldn't have asked for a better first round. Merab wasn't even throwing a whole lot of output early. He didn't start this fight as fast as he started against Petr Yan, yet he still gets to Henry. He closes the distance in the second round, gets a hold of him, and from there on out, bro, it's he just freaking ran him over like a freight train. I've never seen anything like this at bantamweight. The cardio is ridiculous. And we usually talk about Merab. Merab can't take anyone down. He can't take anyone down. Holy shit, did his wrestling look good. Henry's a hard guy to take down. Aljamain Sterling had to put his whole heart and soul into every one of those takedowns. Merab Dvalishvili picks him up like a toothpick. And you look at O'Malley in the crowd trying to act all cool for school, right? Yeah, man, I'm not impressed at all, dude. O'Malley was shitting bricks watching that performance. And I mean, I could not be more impressed. Merab was cracking Henry in the second and third. It was an emasculating look for Henry Cejudo, really. It was a nasty, nasty performance. To lose 2 losses in a row. Your legacy is being stained. And you looked good early. And you were coming off of a razor-close fight with the previous champ. I think Merab Dvalishvili is by far the best bantamweight on the planet right now. The only guy that I could possibly see giving him a real test is O'Malley because he has the one-punch KO power. And even then, man, Merab has phenomenal cardio. He's got the ability to take a big shot and survive. Look at a lot of O'Malley's KOs. He usually is the guy that needs to follow up a couple of times. I'm not saying he can't put Merab out cold. He definitely could. But if he doesn't put him out cold, Merab will survive. We've seen him work his way back into a fight after getting badly dropped against Marlon Moraes. If you have Merab and he makes contact with you in the second round and he gets a hold of you, you're toast. So O'Malley needs to knock this dude out in 5 minutes. And think about the kind of pressure that puts on somebody. If I don't knock this guy out in 5 minutes, I'm fucked. This is not like Volk. This is not necessarily like Khabib. Like, don't get me wrong. Those guys have phenomenal cardio. It's different. It's kind of like Anthony Hernandez. We're going to talk about Anthony Hernandez too, who, in my opinion, has some of the most impressive cardio in UFC history as well. If you don't knock this guy out in the first few minutes, the first round, you just can't win a decision. I don't care if it's Corey Sandhagen and his masterful footwork. It's not only a question of skills. It's about the gas tank too. And now this guy's wrestling is getting even better. And I know he looks like he's 50 years old, but he's only like 32. He's got a win over Jan. He's got a win over Aldo. Crafty man Aldo. Didn't even need a takedown to win that fight. Now he's got a dominant performance over Cejudo that had a razor close fight with Aljo. If he beats O'Malley, Merab, I think you can make a case that he's the bantamweight GOAT. For real. 2 more wins? Oh, forget about it. The question is, can O'Malley put him away? I honestly think O'Malley's his toughest test because he's so good at keeping distance. And you could make the argument that Cejudo is going to be able to tag Merab on the inside when Merab closes the distance, and that is something that you could bring up. And Merab definitely leaves himself open in those tight, close quarters boxing exchanges, but O'Malley could snipe him coming in with a nice, long, rangy right hand. But I would pick Merab to beat him, honestly. So I think that O'Malley's going to get past Cheeto. I want to see Merab fight for the belt next. And it really does remind me of a Khabib versus Conor McGregor matchup. Just the overall vibe and aura that Merab has right now as someone that just seems so invincible. Like, you have to knock him out to finish him. And if you don't, you're going to have to get drowned for 5 rounds. That's a terrifying thing to deal with. Again, how often do we see guys ragdolling Olympic gold medalists while talking to someone in the crowd and like making funny faces at them? Whole different level of dominance. And O'Malley, I'm afraid, is McGregor in this situation, and he's got the knockout chance. And if he doesn't get it done in the early rounds, he's screwed. So amazing win for Merab. Very sad for Cejudo. He didn't get to retire in the cage and have a big moment. I haven't listened to Dana White's post-fight speech or post-fight press conference, but I think he was saying something along the lines of, we don't want that. We don't want any big spectacles in the cage. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if that actually was the case, that's an absolute disgrace. All right, I'll make sure to clarify what he said, but I think that Henry is retiring, and he should have been given an opportunity to do that in the cage. So, yeah. Amazing win for Merab. He deserves a title shot next. No ifs, ands, or buts. Yes, we would love to see O'Malley versus Topuria, but Merab deserves a crack at the belt. And if O'Malley gets... I mean, I guess if he gets beat by Topuria, he'd still be there. So we're not going to lose that matchup. Anyway, let's get on to the next fight. Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa. I definitely need to give Paulo Costa some respect because he showed up looking like an absolute dog. And I have noticed that he was switched on this week more than any other time in recent history with him. I mean, this was not the Costa that showed up to fight Vettori or even Izzy maybe. He looked phenomenal in this fight. He looked to be in the best shape ever. A little bit downsized. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but Paulo definitely seemed a little bit slimmer in general. But I think that even though it was a razor-close fight, Whittaker just barely edged out the second and the third round due to some really good adjustments. But this fight did not have to be so close. And what I mean by that is, I can't be the only one that thought that Whittaker fought terribly early on. I think that he was coming into this fight trying to prove that he was the tougher guy. Trying to have a tough man contest in the center of the cage. He was saying in the build-up to this, I want to hurt Costa, I want to put him away. And I didn't see the light on his feet Robert Whittaker, elusive, Speedy Gonzalez, picking his shots, really utilizing that karate blitz. I saw Whittaker standing in the phone booth with Costa and exchanging big hooks and overhands early. And that's why he lost the first round. Now, his kicks look phenomenal throughout the entirety of the fight, and we saw that starting to get to Costa. But Whittaker was losing the first, he was getting outstruck, and then he took that massive spinning wheel kick to the face. My first reaction is, holy shit, Whittaker's rocked. My second reaction is, holy shit, Paulo Costa has no power. How did he not put Whittaker away with that? I think what's clear to me now is that both guys, Costa and Whittaker, just don't have heavy pop in their hands. They just don't. I mean, Whittaker landed some nasty shots on Costa's chin too. Right on the button. Did not rock him at all. A wheel kick that landed absolutely flush. From the average 200 plus pound middleweight in a cage that would put people away, it makes Robert Whittaker do a little bit of a head dance. And that's it. And Whittaker is usually the guy with the chinny chin chin. But that stole the first round for Costa. Whittaker was getting busted up. And then towards the latter half of the second round, when things seemed pretty even, Whittaker had like 2 minutes of complete control. I think he outlanded Costa by like 15 strikes in the last couple of minutes of the second round. He seemed to have found his groove. He was light on his feet. He was sticking and moving and sticking and moving. And then in the third round, we saw something similar. But Whittaker looked a lot more tired and was more stationary because of it. But I was watching that third round so carefully, and they were tit for tat up until the very end. And I think Whittaker was out ahead on, I'm talking like maybe 3 strikes max. And so I think that it was given to the right guy. I do think that Whittaker won the third. I think there's a much better argument for him to win the third than Costa, and he definitely won the second. Costa won the first. Phenomenal performance from both of these guys. The fact that the UFC gave Fight of the Night to Mackenzie, Dern, and Amanda Lemos is an absolute disgrace. What the heck are they doing? Are you kidding me? Like, this isn't even about WMMA or MMA. That's pathetic. Okay? Merab and Cejudo was a better fight than that. Kopylov and Hernandez was a better fight than Lemos and Dern. We saw Kopylov do some great work early. Hernandez show out in the second round. I mean, come on. I know there were a couple of good moments in Lemos and Dern, but the stakes weren't nearly as high. This was a classic Robert Whittaker war where Paulo Costa showed up looking phenomenal and hungry, and I honestly do feel bad for Costa because, like, this is the best version of Costa I've seen, the most motivated Costa, who was there to go to war, who did not wilt, who did not quit at all, and he was right there, right neck and neck with Whittaker. So unfortunate to see him lose, but I would be really upset to see Whittaker lose too. I don't know if I'm so confident in Whittaker's chances moving forward after such a close fight, after all the damage. I mean, he's had those wars with Yoel. He's got knocked out by Izzy back in the day. He had a crazy fight with DDP and got knocked out. This was a war too. And he looked pretty good, but I'm still just seeing a lack of that finishing ability. And Whittaker kind of has to be like perfect for 15 minutes to have a clean-looking performance. And I don't know, I just didn't see the guy that showed up to fight Gastelum. And of course, part of this was Paulo Costa doing good work. But he was so content with just sitting in the pocket. I didn't like that early. He wasn't moving around a lot. So, great fight. Whittaker found his groove in the later half of the fight, but then he started to tire out. Not the best version that's ever showed up, but still one of the toughest versions, one of the most game versions of Robert Whittaker, and he gets a decent win on his record. Did not get the dominant performance that I expected, and I guess I could like to see him fight. I don't really want to see a Cannonier rematch. Some people were suggesting maybe Sean Strickland, but I want Strickland to fight the winner of Izzy and DDP. Whoever wins that in a title fight, Strickland should fight the winner. Anyway, let's get on to the next one. Geoff Neal and Ian Garry. Man, if you are calling Geoff Neal and Ian Garry a robbery, you're coping big time. I personally had it 29-28 for Ian Garry. It could be 30-27. By the way, whoever gave Robert Whittaker a 30-27 is out of their fucking mind too. That was a clear 29-28. But Neal and Machado Garry, I think Ian Garry looked a lot better than most people are giving him credit for. Like, yes, it was probably the worst fight on the main card, but we also had some crazy fights on the main card. The main event was a sick fight. Merab and Cejudo was a sick fight. Whittaker and Costa is one of the best fights we'll probably see this year. Kopylov and Hernandez was a sick fight. This was just an okay fight. I'm not going to talk about it as if it was some phenomenal performance, but once again we saw Geoff Neal struggle with a long-rangey opponent that knows how to mix it up. And it was the shot selection from Ian Garry, the speed, the range, and you know what? Ian Garry did eat some pretty big shots from Geoff Neal, and Geoff Neal's downfall was he was headhunting. He wasn't mixing it up that much. Sure, he was clinching, but like, what the fuck is Geoff Neal even doing in the clinch? And this is something I've noticed. Like, I understand the concept of clinching with someone to drain their energy, and I'm sure that's part of why he's clinching with Ian Garry, but it's not like he's even using the clinch to find some shots off of the break of it in the pocket when Gary's circling off the fence. It's not like he's looking for takedowns. I mean, he's not. He's just not going for them. I just don't understand the method to this madness from Geoff Neal. He's always clinching and does it for absolutely no reason. And on top of that, I mean, he just wasn't landing enough in the second and third round, and Ian Garry was clearly outlanding him. Sure, Geoff Neal landed some good shots. He landed some good low kicks, and I actually think you can make an argument that he wins the first round because he stung Ian Garry at the end of it, kept it close with the low kicks and a couple of shots up top, but Ian Garry had some phenomenal knees in the clinch, step-in knees with elbows off of the break. He was working the jab. His body kicks were phenomenal. He thought he was going to finish Geoff Neal with a body kick. He had posted a video on his Instagram saying he wanted to fold Geoff Neal up and make him look like he was shitting himself. That didn't happen. Geoff Neal is one of the most durable fighters in the UFC. And I guess Garry just doesn't have that much pop, but I thought this was a pretty clean-looking performance. Most guys that beat Geoff Neal do not have a clean-looking performance. Neil Magny's win over Geoff Neal was a lot messier. Shavkat, we saw, had a really messy fight with him. Now, of course, he got the finish, and he was going into the pocket with Geoff Neal, which is in and of itself impressive, of course. But the last time I've ever seen someone make it look this clean against Geoff Neal, we're talking about Wonderboy Thompson, who did have a better performance, but this is a better version of Geoff Neal, and Ian Garry looked just fine and made it look very clear and clean in the second and third. Didn't do himself any favors getting on the mic. Like, listen, Ian Garry, I think he's of the opinion, like, if he just starts to be a little bit more humble, all of the noise is going to go away, and people are all of a sudden going to love him. But that's not the case. Like, he is not liked by the fans. He didn't get the big finish that's going to win a bunch of people over. I feel like he needed to get on the mic, put his foot down, and just have a little bit more fire in his speech. I mean, this guy's speaking with a raspy voice. It sounds like he's been sick for a couple of weeks, honestly. And I'm not saying I think he's been sick. I'm just saying in general, you can hardly hear the guy on the mic. You know what I mean? That's a problem. You need to be able to hear what you're saying. And the fans are booing him. You know what? Sometimes the fans will literally start cheering for a fighter when the fighter flips them off. Like, I've seen many instances where the fans start booing and the fighter says, "Fuck you! Fuck you!" and everyone starts clapping and changing their tune. I think Ian Garry needed a little bit of that energy. He needed to double down tonight. Because he's literally saying word for word, "You can hate me, you're still here to see me. Amp it up a little bit. Amp it up. Give him the finger. And things are going to be a little bit better." So, Ian Garry's striking looked good. Geoff Neal is a really dangerous opponent to be in front of, and Ian Garry's P-head held up. So I'm not as worried about him moving forward, fighting a guy like Leon Edwards. Maybe we could see Jack Della Maddalena improve big time, and I think that Maddalena's a little bit more well-rounded on the feet, but ultimately, Geoff Neal's just too simple and one-dimensional. He's a headhunter, he's a boxer, and he rushes in the clinch and does absolutely nothing with it. And then he was just getting picked apart with volume on the feet. So good win for Garry. I'd like to see him fight Colby next. That'd be a phenomenal fight. Don't know if Colby's going to take it, but if I'm Colby and I want to fight again and I want to get back on track with the fans, I'm fighting public enemy number one in Ian Garry, because if you win, you'll be loved again. So let's get on to the next one. Anthony Hernandez, Roman Kopylov. I got to admit, guys, it was hard seeing Roman Kopylov get choked out. Like, it was really rough to see that. Because you think of these guys like Kopylov and Peter Yan, these Russians, as like Terminators sometimes. You just can't imagine them getting choked out, choked to sleep. But Anthony Hernandez, dude, as unassuming as he looks, he is the Merab of the upper weight classes that actually has finishing ability, a nasty submission game. He's a dog on the feet. Like, Kopylov was hitting him with some body kicks in this fight that would have folded the average guy in that middleweight division. And I'm not ready to write off Kopylov. Like, listen, Anthony Hernandez, I called this fight the battle of the dark horses, the dark horse championship of the world. Both of them were competing for that belt for a reason. These are the two best middleweight prospects in my opinion. I don't care about who's got the hype or whatnot. Dark horses were fighting for a belt tonight. Hernandez won. I think he's the better guy. I still think Kopylov is elite and can compete in the top 5 in the future. Hernandez, his cardio is Merab-like. Again, these shots that are landed flush, body shots, those body kicks from Kopylov have folded people. He's one of the best kickers in the entirety of the UFC when it comes to finishing people. And we're not even talking about head kicks alone. Hernandez ate them like Tic Tacs. Struggled early, didn't get hurt at all though, lost the first round, and as soon as he makes contact with Kopylov in the second, gets him to the mat, it's like, he was fucked. Like, he just can't keep up with the pace. Hernandez is all over him, doesn't tire out, has a phenomenal submission game. I just don't know who beats this guy. I think that this is the best grappler in the middleweight division right now. You could talk about Khamzat all you want. The guy gasses out after one round. What's Khamzat going to do? You think he's going to choke out Anthony Hernandez? Knock him out? Good luck, bro. Like, yeah, Khamzat hits a little bit harder than Kopylov, but he doesn't land that big KO. He's probably screwed too. I think that Hernandez literally has champ potential. There are going to be some people that are going to say, no, man. Why? Because he's a little bit tubby and he hasn't had any like famous wins yet. Just wait and see. I think that this guy could beat Jared Cannonier. Cannonier's been taken down. He's almost been submitted, right? I know he has good cardio, but you know what? Everyone has okay cardio that fights this guy. Maybe not Shabazian. Hernandez is like a woodland critter from South Park, bro. Like, this is the freaking analogy that I love, man. The comparison. Unassuming. Like those woodland critters in South Park. You don't think they're dangerous at all. The next thing you know, like, they're just killing whoever is in front of them. And Anthony Hernandez, just a nasty guy to fight. Similar situation to Merab. If you don't finish him in the first round, which is a big if because he's super durable and he's got a gas tank to keep him, surviving if he gets rocked, you're done. You are done. Like, Kopylov is one of the most dangerous strikers in the middleweight division. I'd like to see Hernandez get a top 10 opponent, and I'd like to see Kopylov get someone right outside of the top 15. This may sound controversial, but I think that Kopylov would outstrike most people in the top 10. I really do. I don't think the average person in the top 10 at middleweight is taking those body kicks. I don't. And I don't think the average person at middleweight is putting a pace on Kopylov like Hernandez did. And his takedown defense looked pretty good. It has improved. He looked good with his takedown defense in his last outing against Fremd, and he looked good here. It's just that the pace was too much. So I think Kopylov can get the better of guys like Izzy. I know you're not going to like that. Kopylov is in his prime. He's hungry. Izzy's not, and it's a different matchup. All right, I saw people in the chat saying, come on, he just got dominated by Hernandez. It's like, it's a totally different matchup. This is like a Khabib at middleweight. Hernandez we're talking about. He's legit. He's legit. You got to start to understand how good this guy is. Kopylov is too. Maybe not as good, but in striking battles, I think I like his chances against big Paulo Costa. I think I like his chances against a slightly declined Robert Whittaker, who's taken tons of damage. I think I like his chances against an old man Jared Cannonier. Honestly, he could get KO'd, you never know, but I think that this guy has one of the best skill sets and shot selections on the feet. Everything that he throws is hard, and he would be able to run through most people. So, incredible fight. A little bit salty that Kopylov lost, but I like Hernandez too, and I've been hyping him up for a while, and his cardio delivered. I'm not so surprised, honestly. Like, I think he could probably outgrapple everyone in the middleweight division. Outgrappling Khamzat would be hard up until the second and third round, but if this guy fought Strickland, is Strickland a finisher? No. Is Strickland going to be able to stuff those takedowns for 2.5 rounds? I don't know about that, really. Like, this guy's an actual problem, man. Who could beat him? DDP? DDP is going to have to knock him out. DDP has great cardio, but it's like, so did Cejudo, man. Like, a lot of these guys have good cardio up until they're in front of a guy that weaponizes it better than anyone else. And I've never seen someone weaponize a pace in the middleweight division like Hernandez. Never. Who's also a dog on the feet. Super tough. So, there's that. Amazing win for Hernandez. Let's get on to the main event. Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. I'll just kind of summarize what I was saying in my last video without giving too much away. I really do recommend that you guys check that out. That's my raw reaction. No cuts, no edits. I think that Ilia Topuria won this fight not because Volk got KO'd 4 months ago, but because he was always the answer to Volk's style. And I know that that's going to sound rough to some people, but yes, there were a couple of things that we didn't see. Number one, we didn't see any grappling. I wish that Volkanovski had shot a takedown. Like I said, that if he was going to win this fight, he kind of needed to do that. And I was worried that he was going to have success early and get too interested in boxing, and he was going to get too comfortable on the feet. And I think we saw that. Like, he was talking to Topuria while getting backed up, while sweating bullets. I noticed the body language. I noticed, you could just see there was a different level of stress in Volkanovski's physique. I'm not even talking about facial expressions. His facial expressions were saying one thing. I'm looking at the way he's moving, the way he's looking, physique-wise. I'm seeing the guy moving all around, like on the back foot, sweating bullets. And then I'm looking at Topuria, and he's chilling. He's taking shots like tic-tacs. Volkanovski's just entertaining it too much. And I think I saw someone in my comments saying, how could you ever say Volk could have grappled with Topuria? He tried to shoot a takedown, and it got swiftly stuffed. Like, no, it didn't. He didn't try to shoot a single takedown. He went into a clinch exchange with Topuria and landed some knees. He didn't go for it, so we don't know what would have happened. But either way, the reason why I say Topuria is kind of the kryptonite is because you saw all of what Volkanovski was doing. The kicks, the jabs, they just weren't really doing that much damage. Like, for sure, Topuria's nose was getting busted up and he was getting outpointed. But it just seemed like he had that, like, KO threat, the speed, the combinations. He was going to hold on to that for the 4th round, the 5th round, as long as that fight would have continued, unless we were to have seen some grappling exchanges really shake things up. And who knows, maybe Topuria would have got up to his feet and Volkanovski would have expended even more energy. It was just a matter of time before Topuria got into the pocket, where Volkanovski leans back sometimes, and he was just, Volk got caught while he was throwing a hook, which happened when he fought Mendez too, and I actually talked about that exchange he had with Mendez. Mendez put Volk on the back foot after rocking him, and Volk tried to catch him with the hook while Mendez was throwing his hook, and Mendez landed the harder one. We saw something similar here. Topuria's combinations are just so nasty, and I think that if Volk didn't get KO'd by Makhachev, we probably would have seen something very similar. Sure, if Volk didn't get KO'd, maybe he wouldn't feel like the same need to stand on the feet so long, but at the same time, it's like maybe he was just standing because he thought he was winning and he was comfortable there, which was an issue in and of itself. Topuria was good enough to close the distance. He was staying composed, and even when he would miss, like, it just didn't seem to take a lot of energy out of him. His boxing is just OP. It's OP, man. And he doesn't have to fear the power coming back. So maybe we could see Evloev test him a little bit more, because I think Evloev is going to be shooting for the legs, and we know that that guy's got a good gas tank, and he's a phenomenal chain wrestler, but at the same time, it's like he also isn't as good on the feet as Volk, and he doesn't have that much power either. So I think Topuria is going to have a long featherweight title reign. Volkanovski wants a rematch. I'm probably going to make a whole video about that. I don't want to see a rematch. I honestly want him to leave featherweight forever or just retire right now, because either way, if he sticks around, even if he were to win his next fight, that's going to be followed by a bunch of KOs. If he wins his next fight, his confidence is up, I'm getting right back in there, then he gets KO'd. It's going to end in him getting KO'd a bunch of times. Why not leave while your legacy is somewhat intact and you've only lost to 2 guys? Only 2. Twice up a weight class, and once in your division. Once in your division, that looks okay on a resume. No one gets out unscathed unless they leave super early like Khabib. Okay, you got KO'd once at featherweight. Get out on top. You don't want to be the guy that loses twice. You don't want to let Ilia Topuria just clean you up and totally take everything from you with 2 wins off of you. Volkanovski has those 3 wins over Max. Max is probably never going to surpass him. Max has multiple wins off of Aldo. Good luck, Aldo, right? So, Volk should retire. Otherwise, you're basically asking him to take a massive risk in getting KO'd. And I know he looked good tonight, which is why I'm saying it didn't have to do with the chin. He took some big shots early on in this fight. He ate them like Tic Tacs. He just got caught with a really beautiful combination that Topuria landed because his boxing's OP. He's got insanely good combinations in hand speed and power. So, yeah. Great win for Topuria. And I'm starting to accept it right now. Anyway, let's get on to the next fight. Lemos versus Dern. Good fight. I initially thought that maybe Dern should have won. Like, I felt like she edged out the first round. She definitely won the third, and she came out looking like a dog, but she got beat up in the second. And then I rewatched the first round, and I saw that Dern didn't get her takedown until the final 2.5 minutes, and she didn't really do a whole lot with it. So I gave Lemos the fight because in the first round, which was the swing round, Lemos had 2.5 minutes of a dominant striking appearance versus 2.5 minutes of cuddling on the ground for Dern with a couple of pit-pat shots. So, good win for Lemos. Dern fought like a dog. Honestly, really, really impressive heart from Mackenzie Dern. Both of them looked pretty good. It was a good fight. I still think that Merab and Cejudo was a better fight, and that Costa and Whittaker deserve fight of the night, but it is what it is. Honestly, what the fuck, bro? Like, can't we give multiple fights fight of the nights? Like, don't be so stingy, UFC. Billion-dollar company. Rogerio de Lima versus Justin Tafa. I got this one right, too. I made my pick yesterday. Of course, I was originally going to pick de Lima to beat Justin Tafa. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Junior Tafa. Originally, I was going to pick de Lima to beat Justin Tafa. Junior Tafa filled in. I'm not picking a guy on 1 day's notice. He's not that much better than Justin Tafa, and it's like, dude, Rogerio de Lima is very well-rounded. He's got phenomenal grappling. He's got ridiculously good low kicks, some of the best low kicks in heavyweight history. He's crafty, hardly ever gets finished, and so I thought this was a pretty safe pick. For Junior Tafa, nothing to be ashamed of. You took a fight on 1 day's notice. You didn't even get KO'd like that, so of course he got leg kick TKO'd, which is still impressive for Rogerio de Lima. But he didn't take a lot of damage, brain damage that is. And so if you're Junior Tafa, the UFC is going to absolutely love that you leaped at this opportunity to save a spot on the card, a fun heavyweight fight that people were excited for. Everyone's going to love that and respect that, and I think the UFC is probably going to think about paying this guy some more money because of how game he is, and the fans are going to instantly take to this guy and watch his career more closely. So I thought it was a good move. It's not like he got knocked out. He still is pretty good. If you guys don't know, he has a glory kickboxing background, Junior Tafa. But ultimately, great win for Rogerio de Lima. He imposed his will. Those calf kicks were nasty. And I think that he's always a guy that's worth picking unless he is fighting the truly upper echelon fighters in the heavyweight division. Rinya Nakamura versus Carlos Vera. Horrible fight. I got my pick right, but listen, I was going to rip on Rinya Nakamura. I thought he was going to get this one done by first round KO because he has nasty KO power. Instead, we saw him rolling on the ground with Carlos Vera aimlessly. I mean, I can't say aimlessly. He was probably trying to get a finish. He only had like one submission attempt. We saw a bunch of roly-polies for 15 minutes. We saw these guys falling over each other. And for an incredibly high-caliber wrestler like Rinya Nakamura, I expect more. Like, this guy took Fernie Garcia to a decision. And I was thinking, you know what? It's a one-off. I think he'll have a better performance. He's just getting that octagon time. And he does the same thing in front of a failed Ultimate Fighter prospect on the worst season of Ultimate Fighter ever, the McGregor and Chandler season. 36-year-old Carlos Vera. We heard Joe Rogan having aneurysms because the crowds were booing this. God forbid they don't want to see a horrible fight. Rogan was saying the blood curdlers, the blood breathers, and the mouth breathers. Something that had to do with blood. Someone remind me what Rogan said, but it was a way to describe the fans as like being the lowest common denominator. Terrible fight. But then Rinya Nakamura got on the mic and apologized, and he actually looked super ashamed of himself, and he recognized that it was a horrible performance, and he was embarrassed. And you know what? To me, that's a great mindset to have. Not only because, first of all, he's just being real with himself. He's being honest. Number two, if you could admit that you just didn't look that good, and most people can see that, you're going to be able to learn from that. You're going to be able to put the bar higher to try to get a lot better. A lot of guys instead would get on the mic and they would flip the crowd off and say, fuck you, I did well. Remember I said Ian Garry should have done that? It was for different reasons, though. Ian Garry should have done that to, like, sell himself more as a star. Ian Garry is not in a position to start crying on the mic and saying, sorry, everyone. That would look so unbelievably pathetic. He can't do that shit. Rinya Nakamura, though. And also, he shouldn't have done that because his performance isn't that atrocious. For Rinya, though, it was atrocious. He said that he broke his hand, and he honestly looked like he was about to cry because of how bad this fight was. And I honestly respect him, bro, because, like, listen, it's tough to admit it, but he's super hard on himself, and I think that that is actually going to make this guy grow a lot as an MMA fighter. And I think a lot of fans are going to give him another chance. So, I mean, obviously, he's still undefeated in the UFC, but next time I think he'll come out with a vengeance. Okay win for him. Zhang Mingyang and Brenson Ribeiro. This was the fight that I told you guys you needed to watch and pay close attention to on the early prelims, or on the prelims in general. Poor man's Alex Pereira with the 81-inch reach and Brenson Ribeiro. And Zhang Mingyang. I picked Zhang Mingyang. I was going to pick Brenson because I saw his performance on Tough, and I hadn't watched Zhang like that. I mean, I went back and watched Zhang's fights, and I was super impressed. And I was like, wait a second, I'm actually going to end up picking this guy, because what I saw is that Brenson, although he's got a freakishly long reach and some nasty straight punches, he just doesn't have a good chin. He's chinny, and he's wild. And Zhang Mingyang has a granite chin, and he's got, like, short, compact style of boxing. And if he can get it on the inside, he will be able to land big shots, and he did. And he brutally KO'd Brenson Ribeiro. Amazing performance. I am kind of sad that someone as fun as Brenson got knocked out, but Zhang is fun too. He's like a freaking, 205 Song Yadong with that, like, short, compact style, nasty KO power, granite chin, similar style, willing to take damage. Amazing fight while it lasted, only a couple minutes long, but it lived up to the hype. I got my pick right there. I think that was a pretty good pick as well. So shout out to Zhang Mingyang. I can't wait for his next fight. Both of those guys, I can't wait for their next fight. But yeah, Brenson Ribeiro's chin is just a little bit suspect. He was landing some great shots, though. He was landing some phenomenal shots. No cigar, though. Zhang Mingyang ate them like Tic Tacs and stayed composed, got the KO. Next up, we had Josh Quinlan versus, I think, Danny Barlow. Barlow looked great. Found the KO in the second round, or I think it was the third round, actually. He looked great early on. Second round was a little bit close, but Quinlan just took so much damage, and I think he got dropped like 3 times in the last round. His eye was busted up. It was a standing TKO, even though he had been dropped, but, he could hardly hold himself up on his own. Danny Barlow, I think he's only 27 years old. He's got crazy speed, he's got a long reach, and he was hitting Quinlan with some nasty shots that I think would KO the average welterweight, and Quinlan was eating them because he has a really good chin. A lot of good chins on this card. Still, we had some KOs, so great performance from Danny Barlow. I will be watching him closely because he, in my opinion, is an interesting prospect. Last but not least, Val Woodburn versus Oban Elliott. Oban Elliott gets it done. Outgrapples Val Woodburn, outstrikes him. He looked decent. There were times where he was ragdolling Woodburn on the ground, getting close to a submission or a TKO. Landed some great shots on the feet in the third round and the second round too. Unfortunately, Woodburn's just not that good. I know a lot of people wanted him to win. I kind of wanted him to win. But, he's just not that good. What do I have to say? Like, outside of him being strong and looking like a powerful dude, there's not a whole lot there. He's tough, fair enough. But he just doesn't have it, He's been going to, like, close decisions with, like, 40-year-old cans outside of the UFC. Oban Elliott has lost more outside of the UFC, but at the same time, he's faced better levels of competition. He proved to be the better striker. He proved to be the much better grappler. It would have been nice to see a finish. I'm not saying this guy is our future Habib, but he did get a good win over Val Woodburn. And that's it, guys. That is it. We went 9-2 on the card overall. Volkanovski loses to Topuria. That's the one that I really wanted to get right, and we got it wrong. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for 70,000 subscribers. Again, means a lot to me. It's a big number, and I want to thank you for all the support. Until next time.